Hi, welcome to the final recording then for chapter 6. Just looking at section 6, 7 and 8, relatively short recording, just to get us over the line, ready for chapter 7 then. Okay, so what have we seen so far in chapter 6? We've thought about what data and information, what that actually means, what are the definitions of those things. We thought about the different systems that we can use in order to process that data and turn it into usable information. We also thought about what makes good information. We thought about what makes good processing, and now we're going to finally move on to a vital part, which is thinking about security. So there's no point having a great data collection and processing system if it's wide open to manipulation. Okay, so information security is really key. And if you think about the security around the data at work that you experience at work, there's going to be lots of things from requiring people to log on to a system. Only certain people can log on, all the way down to thinking about your accounting package not allowing you to post 2 debits or 2 credits or uneven journals. Okay, so first thing we're going to start off with is thinking about what the risks to data are. Okay, so firstly we've got human error. Always going to be a key one. So it doesn't matter how good you are, everybody makes mistakes. And that could be, for example, entering an incorrect transaction. You might also find an issue in terms of corrupt data. So probably doesn't happen so much anymore, but I've certainly experienced, you go to open a file and it's just not there, or it's corrupt and the numbers are all mixed up, or the text is unable to be read or whatever, or maybe you haven't saved it in the right place, or it hasn't saved correctly. Obviously you also have kind of bigger things like a natural disaster, so if there's a flood and your server gets damaged, or you have somebody who comes in and actually deliberately tries to damage your data. Okay, we've got another way here, or another set of qualities. We've looked at what makes good information, we looked at what makes good processing. Now we're going to think about what gives me a secure system, and we used ASIANA to remember that. So another way for you to remember. Okay, so first of all, availability. You need to be able to access information. Okay, so you could absolutely have a very secure system if nobody could ever access it. But you absolutely have to be able to access the info, otherwise it's not a very good system at all. Now the key comes in confidentiality, and that's in that it should only be accessed by people who are allowed to look at it. So it should be closed to anybody not permitted to access the information. It has to have integrity, so the information should be the same, should be consistent with the sources. Okay, so it hasn't been tampered with in any way. It should have non-repudiation. This just refers to the problem of having a system that's known to be a problem and people rejecting the data from it. So it really refers to not being able to reject the data, or not open to rejection. Based on problems that they've had in the past, so it's reliable. And then finally, authorization. So if there's any changes to be made, it should only be made by people with authority to do so. Okay, so that's what makes a secure information system. Now, in terms of integrity controls, so things that ensure reliability, if you want, we've got a few here to think about. So firstly, you've got data verification. So data verification is some method to say, let's make sure that anything we've entered matches source documents. And we've said this several times. We've said you have to make sure that the system has integrity, so it matches what it's supposed to match. Data validation ensures that the data entered is not incomplete or unreasonable, and there's lots of checks built into a system that will prevent this from happening. So for example, you might have some check digits. So check digits, or a check digit, is a digit calculated by the program, added to a piece of code being checked to validate it. So for example, if you were to look at the last digit on a barcode, that last digit isn't actually used to identify an item. It's used to ensure that the preceding numbers in the barcode are valid. So it performs a calculation on the I don't know, 7 or however many numbers come before that last digit, and the answer is going to be that last digit. And if you're at all interested, there's lots of websites you can go on and type in the kind of preceding numbers, and it will tell you what the last number must be. And this way, the knows that it's a real barcode. You can have a control total or perhaps a hash total. So this is just a way of saying, look, this information that I've entered should come to this in total. I can just have a sum then to say, yes, this is the total, or there's something missing, and I'll be able to then see that I've put everything in that I needed to. Range checks just ensure that you only put things in within a certain range, and limit checks make sure that you don't put in anything over a certain amount. So there might be a maximum figure. Other integrity controls then will just be backup and archiving, so making sure that if there is a fault with the system or any downtime, that we don't lose anything. Personnel selection, so making sure that you don't employ people that are likely to kind of deliberately damage your information. And then also segregation of duties, so not allowing one person to do lots and lots and lots of things unchecked. So for example, setting up a new supplier and then paying that supplier, you should really have more than one person involved in that process. This term cybersecurity just refers to however I actually try to protect myself, so any hardware, software, information, how do I protect those things from damage, so any of those methods that we've just discussed. Section 7 then moves on to thinking about who's going to use my financial information, and by understanding who uses the information and understanding what they need, that will enable me then to make sure I provide good information. So again, we've got our list here of our different stakeholders. So you've got people like shareholders, you've got your employees, over the page you've got suppliers, and so on. And we've got here the types of information that they're going to need. So I'm not going to go through all of them, I'll just pick a few out, but make sure you've had a look over here. And once you understand the different stakeholders, it's then relatively straightforward to think about what information they're going to need. So for example, here we've got our present and potential investors, so the shareholders. They're going to need information around what risk they're likely to face and what compensation they're going to get as a result of taking that risk on. And also thinking about, well, is the company going to pay dividends out? What's their history of paying dividends? What's their cash flow status, and so on. Let's jump down to employees then. As an employee, what are you looking for from your company, from your organization? Definitely thinking about, well, are you making a profit and are you going to carry on working? Your job security, your ongoing job security is going to be vitally important to that. You're also going to think about, well, am I going to get the package, the salary package I need? Are they going to give me some sort of role in the future? Are they going to give me some sort of progression? And what kind of pension, what kind of healthcare benefits, and so on. Let's just have a quick look at suppliers then. So suppliers are going to want to know, well, when are they going to be paid? So lots of different stakeholders are going to want lots of different information. Make sure that you've had a good look over that. But as I said, relatively straightforward. Okay, so the final couple of bits then for chapter 6. Firstly, looking at the qualitative characteristics of financial statements, and then the very final aspect is looking at limitations of financial information, just a few there. Okay, so 7.2, looking at the qualitative characteristics of financial statements. So when one of our stakeholders are using the financial statements, for example, to see whether or not they're going to be able to, whether they're going to get paid, for example, if you're a supplier, or so on. There are two key characteristics that make them useful. So firstly, you've got relevance, and secondly, you've got faithful representation. So a financial statement is relevant if it has predictive or confirmatory value. So predictive value is if the information used can aid the prediction of future outcomes, and confirmatory it's providing feedback about previous evaluations. So either it predicts something or it confirms something. Faithful representation is just making sure that everything is complete, neutral, and free from error. So is it reliable in that sense? Now, if a business wanted to increase the usefulness or enhance those qualitative characteristics, we've got 4 methods of being able to do that. So you can make the information as understandable as possible. Okay, so that's really going to enable that kind of relevance. Okay, comparability, so making sure that I'm consistent over time. So I'm enabling people to review performance based on the same measurement. Verifiability, so making sure that if I had someone independent come in and look over my numbers, they'd agree with me. And then finally, timeliness, making sure that if anybody who's going to have to use my information to make a decision, that they have the information on time. Otherwise, it's not very useful at all. Okay. Finally, at the bottom here, we've got a few limitations of financial information. So we've spent the chapter so far talking about why financial information is so useful, who needs it, what they need it for. But we really do need to consider those limitations too. So let's just go through those 3, and then that's the end of chapter 6. Okay, let's just make that bigger again. Okay, so firstly, conventional representation. So when you look at a set of financial statements, for example, or even just any sort of financial information that you might produce at work, often going to be very standardized and highly aggregated, so lots of totals rather than looking at transactions in detail. And that's understandable considering the amount of transactions, but at the same time it does limit the usefulness. Also, the nature of financial statements is that they're backward looking. Okay, they cover something that's already happened and already ended. Now, often people will use that as an indication of what's going to happen in the future, and perhaps that's not always the best idea. And that kind of leads us on to the omission of non-financial information. So often non-financial performance measurements are a better indication of what's going to happen in the future than your financial statements. And that's because they include things like how happy are your customers, how good are your internal processes, how good are you as an organization at learning. And so all of these things that are non-financial in nature but give me a better indication of what is going to happen in the future. Now, those 3 examples that I've given are straight from the balanced scorecard, and we're going to be able to cover the balanced scorecard next in chapter 7. Okay, that's the end of chapter 6 then. Next up with chapter 7, we start to look in more detail at the business's finance function.